Hey guys, so the topic which I am going to discuss is nitrogen balance studies and also the factors which influence the nitrogen balance and the components involved. First of all, let's discuss what is nitrogen balance. Nitrogen balance is the net value of nitrogen which the body possesses in the form of majorly amino acids and proteins. It has two major components, nitrogen intake and nitrogen loss. Nitrogen intake is the amount of nitrogen which the body ingests in the form of amino acids and proteins, etc. And nitrogen loss is the amount of nitrogen excreted out in the form of majorly urea. The major sources of nitrogen are meat, dairy, egg, nuts, legumes, grains, cereals. The points of nitrogen loss are urine, feces, sweat, hair, and skin. The amount of nitrogen balance is crucial, and measuring the nitrogen balance is essential for understanding the bodily state. The key component for assessing the nitrogen balance is blood urea. Now let's discuss about nitrogen balance and protein metabolism. Yes, the protein metabolism majorly regulates nitrogen balance, which is affected in case of hypo and hyperthyroidism. And the reason why it regulates nitrogen balance is because proteins are composed of amino acids, and these amino acids have nitrogen in their N terminus. And some amino acids like lysine and arginine have nitrogen in their side chains as well. So if there is any impairment in protein metabolism, then one way or the other it affects nitrogen balance. Nitrogen balance has three subsets: positive nitrogen balance, negative nitrogen balance, and zero nitrogen balance. This zero nitrogen balance occurs in the state when the ingested amount is equal to the amount of nitrogen excreted, which usually happens in the resting state. The other two components, that is positive nitrogen balance and negative nitrogen balance, are active in various phases of life and also in different clinical conditions associated with the individual. Let's discuss about positive nitrogen balance. Positive nitrogen balance occurs when the amount of nitrogen ingested in the form of amino acids and proteins is higher than that of amount of nitrogen excreted in the form of urea. This indicates that body is retaining the nitrogen ingested in the form of new proteins. And why body does that, we are going to discuss one by one. First, let us take the case of pregnancy. During the pregnancy phase, when the fetus is growing, there is an increase in energy demand and the protein requirement is also intense, and for supporting the needs, the body switches to positive nitrogen balance. Childhood. Childhood is the growing phase of life. During this phase, the body has to increase in size and also the muscle mass has to increase. So the body adapts to positive nitrogen balance. Recovery from illness. Illness is a catabolic situation when the body loses something, usually in the form of skeletal muscle breakdown, and hence the recovery phase of this illness is associated with positive nitrogen balance. Bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is advised with protein rich diet, and the reason is to maintain the positive nitrogen balance to increase the muscle mass. During feeding after starvation. During feeding after starvation has two components, feeding and starvation. During the starvation phase, when there is no external energy source, the body starts breaking down the muscle mass to and support the energy requirement. And when this feeding is resumed after long starvation, the body starts replenishing its reserves again. Hypothyroidism. As I have already mentioned, hypothyroidism influences protein metabolism and hence the nitrogen balance. There are certain hormones also which influence the positive nitrogen balance, like growth hormone, insulin, androgens, etc. Negative nitrogen balance. Negative nitrogen balance occurs when the amount of nitrogen excreted in the form of urea is higher than that of nitrogen intake in the form of amino acids. This happens when the proteins that are already present inside the body are broken down and hence the loss is higher than intake. Now these proteins which are broken down release amino acids which enter the amino acid catabolism pathway and hence urea formation in liver via urea cycle. Let's discuss the factors which influence negative nitrogen balance. Starvation. As I have already explained, starvation leads to skeletal muscle breakdown, thereby increasing higher nitrogen loss. Chronic illness, catabolic conditions like stress, trauma, cancer. These all are the stressful situations which lead to negative nitrogen balance. For example, let us consider the case of cancer. Cancerous cells are rapidly dividing with high energy demand, and protein requirement for this uncontrolled replication and cell division to happen is supported by this negative nitrogen balance. Deficiency of essential amino acids. Deficiency of even one essential amino acid can lead to negative nitrogen balance. Let us understand this fact by considering the case of methionine. Methionine, as we all know, is an essential amino acid and is also an initiator codon, AUG. So if there is any deficiency in methionine, then for translation machinery to go on, body starts breaking down certain proteins to replenish methionine back for translation to happen. Senescence, the aging process. Now, this aging process is usually associated with decrease in muscle mass resulting from negative nitrogen balance. Hyperthyroidism, like in case of hypothyroidism, acts antagonistically on protein metabolism and thereby affecting the nitrogen balance, leading to negative nitrogen balance. Certain hormones like corticosteroids and T4 thyroxine also influence negative nitrogen balance. Zero nitrogen balance, as I have already explained, when there is no net gain or loss of nitrogen from the body, that is, the nitrogen intake in the form of amino acids or proteins is equal to the amount of nitrogen which is excreted out in the form of urea, which is usually in the cases of resting state. And thank you.